Hey, it's Tony Robbins. Welcome to the podcast. I'm very excited about today because it's 13.8 billion years in the making. We'll explain what that means in a minute. But, you know, most of my life, 41 years of my life, I've been obsessed with trying to find the ways to help people have a greater quality of life, whatever that is for them. Life on their terms, not my idea of what a quality life is, but theirs. And, you know, people come to me all the time and come to events and they want to transform their business, or they want to transform their body, or they want to rebuild or deepen a relationship or create one, or they just want to feel joy or happiness. We're all pursuing all these things, but really it's just this experience of life at its highest level that we're all searching for. And over the last few decades, you know, early in my life, I figured I didn't have much control of my external world. There was so much suffering that I figured I got to master that. And so I worked hard and for decades learning from the smartest people I could. How could I achieve, succeed, break through, master myself, push myself? And all those tools you could call maybe the science of achievement. It's like, how do you take what you envision and make it real? How do you go from, you know, having possibility to actually creating that in your life? But as I experienced that over the decades, I also noticed that so many people who are great achievers were just not happy. I mean, I go to India, I usually go about every 12 to 18 months, and I remember when I first went there, I was like, this poverty was overwhelming to me. And it was so confusing to see people so happy, you know, because all around them, they seemed to have such squalor. I'd see someone sitting in the street and there was just so much joy in their eyes if you took the time to feel them and talk with them instead of judging the environment. And then I'd come home to the United States where there's all this external abundance, and you'd find people, you know, many of you know, I wrote Money Master the Game. I interviewed 50 of the smartest financial people in the world, self-made billionaires. And I wouldn't say the majority of them are really happy. And it has nothing to do with the money. It's that the internal world was not mastered. So if there's two sciences or two master skills, I think, in life that we want, it's like if we took East and West and put them together and we didn't make the other one wrong, we'd say, hey, it's mastering the science of achievement, but also the art of fulfillment. And of the two, for the last 4 or 5 years, I've been traveling the country, really trying to get people to feel and experience the beauty that comes when what's inside is great, regardless of what's outside. The outside world will never make you happy long term. What you get will never make you happy. Who you become, what you experience, what you give, that's what makes us really happy. So this session is around that deeper part, but it's very pragmatic. And in fact, in this session, my wife Sage is going to join us. Hi, sweetheart.
Hi, everyone.
I'm so grateful to have you. And we're going to do this together because this is our mutual passion, and also because the man we're about to introduce you to is just so dear to us personally. He's an extraordinary soul. He's a man that is deeply spiritual, but also, I think for you achievers out there, he's built a $1 billion business at one point here, and he did all that through guidance, not so much trying to force it. And I'm going to come to him in just a moment, but he wrote an incredible book. And maybe, honey, talk about when we discovered this book together. We're at a bookstore and we both saw this book and we both grabbed it after being in India for a period of time. But tell them what our experience has been.
We were so spoken to, and honestly, I think
The Untethered Soul, by the way.
The Untethered Soul, yes.
By Michael
Michael
Singer. Nikki to
Singer,
his friends and students.
And it just so so deeply touched our lives. It actually ended up being our Christmas gift for all of our beloveds about 3 years ago, Mickey. And there's a chapter that we'll share with you, but it was just so incredibly poignant for me personally, chapter 17. And just the beautiful inward journey just gave a lot of perspective in the how, the what, the why, and brought it together in the most beautiful way. And we had the privilege to meet Mickey a couple of years ago and just love his spirit and his goodness and his isness. And it's just a privilege to be with you today.
Thank you. Thank
you for coming. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be with you.
It's an honor to be with you, truly.
Mickey, you live in a 600-acre paradise that you've kind of uncovered and discovered and created over the years. It's in the middle of the forest in Gainesville. What the heck made you come out here? Because you rarely do. We're really honored to have you.
Right. I'm honored to be here. Like your spirit, right? I loved when you came out and visited me to see the tremendous energy that you managed to bring forward and that you devoted yourself to helping others do that, because that's what it's about. Like you said, it's not about the outside. Who cares about the outside? You care about how the outside affects the inside. That's what everybody cares about, is what's going on in here, right? The exact same thing that turns somebody else on, turns somebody else off. And what do we mean by that? What does it do inside? And so I'm very pleased and honored to be with you both and know you both, because despite your tremendous success, you haven't lost your way. You know, you've basically realized, wait a minute, it's not about that. It's about the effect that that has in here. Yeah. Well, why don't I, my whole thing was, why don't I just work in here? If that's what I'm interested in, if that's what it's about, why don't I learn to open the faucet inside so that the energy, the beautiful energy you have and that people have, the beautiful energy can be there, not that somebody else has to turn on the faucet. Yeah. Not that money has to turn on. Nothing wrong with those things, right? But you have the right to turn on the faucet and then have fun doing those things instead of needing those things in order to get the energy flowing. Yes. You know, so.
I've always tried to be a Trojan horse. People come to me for the things they want that are usually external. And then my goal is to get them to what they need, which is that deeper spiritual sense of aliveness and contribution and growth. I want to have you share a bit of your story, but I'd like to start. First of all, there's a course. I wanted to do this because there's a course besides the Untethered Soul, which we recommend you all pick up. And secondly, we'll talk about the Surrender Experiment. There is a course you have now that's online that is extraordinary. It's 8 sessions, 8 hours. You can do it 8 days in a row, 8 weeks in a row, 8 hours in a row, whichever you prefer to do. We're kind of 8 hour in a row kind of people. But it really takes all of your work, all of your teaching, and it shares it. And it's kind of the untethered soul in action, so to speak. And in it, you give a little 30-minute kind of free course up front, like 3 10-minute sessions. And those 3 10-minute sessions, you've got to go see these right away. You talk about that the mind, so many people are so stressed in the world we live in today, that the mind is a dangerous place or it can be a beautiful place. Tell us a little bit about what that means to you and how you kind of discovered it.
No, I discovered it by what I said, realizing, having some experiences inside, which we all have, falling in love, having something go your way, and realizing it's not going to stay that way. The world keeps changing, right? And what you're looking for is the experience. And so I was very young, in my early 20s, that I said, isn't there a way to feel that all the time, not have it conditionally, but feel it all the time? And where I went was very different than others, is instead of trying to seek that beautiful feeling, I tried to see why I don't feel that beautiful feeling.
What's getting in the way?
And I started working with, okay, now I have this beautiful feeling. Something went my way, something worked. Why does it go away? It's in there. Nobody else is in there but me. Why does it go away? And I watched very carefully, like a scientist, and saw that it was the mind. That my mind would just sit there and say, yeah, well, she says she loves me, but other people have told me that. That's it. The mind, the minute the mind says that, there's not so much love flowing in there, right? And then I noticed that it was always saying that. And it was a serious party pooper, right? And then I noticed that it was
There's no bigger party pooper than the mind if you don't manage it.
It's what's doing it. And then I noticed it would say things like, well, I'll be happy if this happens. Okay? And yes, it's true. If that happened, I'd be happy. But there are 700 billion other things that could have happened instead of that. And by saying, I'll be happy if that happens, you said I won't be happy if all the rest happens. Because I'm looking just for that. And I started watching that, spending a lot of time with that, and realizing the mind can be a serious problem, all right? But it is also true that if you learn to work with it, not mind control, but learn to understand why the mind is doing what it's doing and undercut that, that you will find that it's a tremendously beautiful tool that can serve you beautifully instead of being a party pooper.
It's so true. So. And I felt like going through the course itself, I felt like it just gave fundamental principles of the why we experience this. And it's something that people really don't talk about. I mean, I think it's the one common ground that unites all of us in this human experience on Earth School. We all experience pain. We all feel fear. We all can feel crazy inside of our minds at times. And I just felt like it gave just such a beautiful context of the why, and understanding that why, the clear way to be able to navigate and catch yourself and get some distance to get behind that in the most beautiful way. And I just felt like there was just such a, you gave such beautiful examples and stories. We watched it like a Netflix binge watch. We really did. We loved it. It was just, you were so beautiful, and you gave such consistent context of the understanding that just really created a beautiful unraveling inside, Mickey.
Thank you. Thank you.
You talk about, I think people in the West see the power of the mind from the standpoint of, like you talk about, we split the atom, we put a man on the moon, for God's sakes. But then we don't realize that if we don't train and step out of the mind, that it starts to run us. Especially technology today has really begun to refine that. So what is it? Why is it this dangerous place? And how can we begin to change it or begin to come to something deeper?
It took me a long time to actually clearly see what was going on. Because the first thing you try to do is shut the thing up.
Oh, yes.
Say to somebody, you used to say, shut up, right?
Literally.
And you realize it's not about mind control, right? It's why is the mind doing that, not don't do that.
Yes.
Why would it do that? Somebody once asked me, after they read The Untethered Soul, and I talk about that voice in your head drives you crazy, they literally said, why did God put that in there? Why would he do such a thing, right? And you realize, no, that's not what happened, all right? And in the most succinct way I can say it, what happened is as follows, all right? You have had experiences, we all have, in our lives that were not pleasant. Somebody hurt us, the house burned down, we broke an arm, lots of things, we saw a snake, lots of things happen that when they come in, we who are in there don't enjoy the experience, we don't like the experience. But what we do, because we don't want to have the experience, is we try to push it away. We try to control it so it doesn't come all the way into us. And it seems natural. Like if somebody took a swing at you, you'd put your arm up. Well, this is like that. Something comes in and you have hands in there, right? And you use your will to keep this from coming too close. But what you don't realize is that when you do that, it stays inside of you.
It's trapped.
It stays inside of you. It's trapped. You trap the energy with all of that discord, right? Because you didn't let it pass. You didn't let it free. And by the time you spend a very little period of time on this earth, you've collected a bunch of those, right? Psychology says your formative years are what? The collection of that stuff, right? It doesn't want to stay in there. That's what people don't understand. It is not true that it's burned into your brain. You are holding it there with your will. And you know that because every time it comes back up, you push it back down.
So afraid to feel it.
That's exactly right. Somebody says something that disturbs you, and you said, I need a moment. If you're lucky, if you don't hit them, right? I need a moment, right? And you start with your breath, and you push, and then you say, I'm okay now. No, you're not. You pushed it back down, okay? And so to make a long story short, it's a long story, right? What would happen if you collected every single thing that disturbed you during your entire life inside of your mind? You would have a disturbed mind, and that's what's going on.
For the vast majority of us. So, one of the things that I loved in the course, there was an insight, it was so simple, but I always believe that most of us make life so complex, and the enemy of execution is complexity. So you did a beautiful job of simplicity, and I've shared it many times also to remind myself that whenever we feel stress, we all feel frustration, anger, worry, sadness, loneliness, whatever, depression, any emotion that disturbs us, that what most of us do is we try to focus on the outside world to change something, change her, change him, change the environment, change the job,
distract ourselves,
change the culture, change the music, change the something. But we're all trying to change the outside world so that we can feel good on the inside. When in reality, we just need to go work on the inside. So when our triggers, when life strikes us and we feel that internal reaction to the external world, it's still what's going on inside. How do we release that? How do we let that go?
So my experience is, first of all, there are things you can do, but the same things everybody else teaches, which is don't hit somebody. To learn to shut your mouth up. Don't let that express through your mouth because you're going to pay for that, right? So the first thing is a certain amount of self-control, which we all need in order to be successful, right? But that's not the answer, right? The answer is every single moment is not the big stuff that you work with. That's too late. It already bothered you. Yes, you have to deal with it. But what I want and what I've learned is there is every moment of your life little things that create little irritations. The driver's driving 15 miles an hour below the speed limit in front of you and you're in a rush. It rains when you have to get out and deliver something. It's hot, et cetera, right? Somebody doesn't say hello. Hey, Sally, how you doing? She doesn't turn around. Oh, my God. You will watch your mind cause serious problems, all right? So to me, that is where the growth comes from, in those moments. Are you willing to say, come on, what's the cost-benefit analysis of bothering myself about the driver in front of me? It's not bothering them. I guarantee you, they're not hearing a word you're saying, right? So as a business person, we're supposed to take cost-benefit analysis, the maximum benefit for the least cost. Those are 100% cost, zero benefit. Right or wrong.
It's all pain.
So you don't do it. So you learn, and there are lots of techniques. You just learn to work with yourself. You can neutralize it by saying something nice. You can get a mantra going inside so you pay attention to something else instead of that. Or my ultimate teaching, and it's yours also in a sense, is you relax. You relax. You just sit there and say, I can relax and breathe. It's okay that this is happening. And then what you're doing is allowing the energy to release. The whole idea is you don't engage with it. You sit behind it and you allow it to release. And not only do you go through that moment okay now, right, but you've actually let some of that stored up stuff that's causing the problem. Like, what is road rage? It's somebody who, because somebody beeped at them or is driving slow, has so much stuff inside of them that it needs an excuse to come out.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yes.
Okay? Yeah. So we all, I hope we don't all, right? But we all have stuff inside that we've stored over our lives.
Yes.
So by backing off and letting go in these simple little situations, they matter. It matters that you're complaining about the heat.
Yeah.
You understand that, right?
Yes.
It's not innocent. You're permitting, sometimes you get very angry about some stupid thing. You're giving a channel for your stuff to come up.
And you're wiring yourself to complain.
Exactly.
What's wrong. Yeah.
And so instead, you relax. It's called R&R. You get R&R, relax and release, right? And what will happen is not only do you make it past that moment without causing a lot of trouble and taking out all kinds of stuff, but you let some of that stuff go. And you get into the habit of realizing, hey, I don't want that stuff inside of me.
Yes.
And in order to do that, I think you have to see that everything isn't life and death, that your preferences aren't life and death.
Yes.
You know, because you see people, we think if it doesn't happen this way, then all hell breaks loose. And no, if you just stay with it, all hell won't break. Something better will show up, you know. I used to interview for years. I did a course where we had a night we called You Have No Problems. And I would bring in people who have what most people consider to be a real problem. You know, somebody who was a woman who was raped by her father. When she had a speech impediment, couldn't speak well, and hard of hearing. And when she tried to tell somebody, he had her institutionalized. Now she's a comedian. Her name's Kathy Buckley, a dear friend of mine. Or a young man who was, 6'2", blonde, blue-eyed. You know, girls love him. Lifeguard in Newport Beach, California. And one day, 24 years old, he dives in a wave and boom, breaks his neck, quadriplegic for life. And I bring them on stage and interview them because the ones I look for were the ones that had this incredible joy every moment of their life. And he can't move anything. He uses his mouth to write and to push the buttons and to move things around. And I remember I asked him, and the reason I was saying the story is I said to him, how do you do it? And he goes, Tony, guys like you and I are great at the boulders of life. He goes, it's the pebbles that F you up.
Yes.
He goes, the things you're not ready for, you step on. So what you just said is so true. Talk about, if you would, for us, how we make our preferences life and death, and how do we let go of that? Because for achievers, letting go is not a term they usually, like surrender sounds like giving up and letting go. But really, what to me it is you look at, what's the difference between fear and faith? They're both made up. What you're really saying when you're letting go is you're having faith that there's something even greater will come from this, something good will come from this, that there's a higher guidance in this process. That's my perception. I want to know yours.
My perception is, it's fine, and I agree, it's more grounded, it's more base.
Great.
To sit there and say, if I am driving down the street and that person is driving below the speed limit, and I am causing myself anxiety and trouble, right? And getting ulcers, and then getting mad at the kids or whatever the heck it is, right?
Yeah.
That, I don't want that. So it's not so much getting what I want.
Yes.
It's seeing some bottom line stuff. Why am I doing that? It doesn't make sense, right? And so I would encourage people to just even look at that low-hanging fruit.
Yes.
Yeah, what's getting in the way?
That's right. You're doing it. The ones that you're doing completely yourself, and say, can I learn to not do this? Right? How you go about it is a very personal thing, right? But it's something you start owning, that how can I be happy if I'm making myself unhappy?
It's so true.
And so what people do is they make themselves unhappy, then try to find a situation that will compensate for it.
Yes,
the outside
yes,
world
yes,
wants
exactly.
Well, that's ridiculous.
Yes.
Like, I'm insecure and I don't feel loved and nobody can really love me and I got all these emotional problems. I need to find somebody that will make me feel loved.
Yes.
That's ridiculous. You live in there. You're
Yes.
doing this.
Yes.
If you would just work with yourself, you're going to find out that everything makes you feel loved because you stop closing yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to.
For myself, what's so interesting just on my own path, and for those of you listening, it starts because we're in there at the beginning. I didn't even know what I was believing and thinking. You know, you feel the resistance or you feel the discomfort physically, and then it's like once you have the awareness, you're able to get a bit of distance behind it. And then it was almost like I felt like I was watching myself, like, well, that's dramatic. I would literally be like, well, that was a dramatic response. That's unnecessary. And what came at the beginning, it was, for myself anyways, it was almost hard to catch it because it was happening so often. I was unaware of what I was aware of, you know what I mean, at the very beginning. But with the awareness of mind and using, for myself, my body, I would just look at when I'd felt the resistance. It's like we know when we're open and you're connected. But when I'd start to feel like resistance or a shutdown or a tension, I'd be like, what on God's green earth? It literally took that to actually start to identify what I was actually feeling or thinking. And then with that awareness, it was like, well, this is, I get a bit of distance behind and have the awareness how ridiculous it was, and almost saw myself, and it brought humor. It brought humor rather than the charge of being in it and caught by it. It's so beautiful. And it's a endless, daily, beautiful, humbling practice. It's truly
freeing yourself.
Freeing yourself daily and life brings things. It's like as soon as you start to get transcendence or understanding in one area, then life will give you something else, and it's like, oh, this too. And that's the beautiful, endless inward journey of really freeing ourselves and experiencing internal liberation.
If you're having that stress just driving in the car because someone is doing something you can't control, it's probably not just that, right? It's been the stacking of all those things through time. So you ask a question early in the Untethered Soul where you say, do you really want to be happy? Do you want to be happy? Do you, or do you not want to be happy? And you talk about making that decision, and that's something we had just made, ironically, before we read the book, so it was so like guided and affirmed. But let's talk about that. Why aren't most people happy? And if they have the ability to be happy. They think something on the outside will make them happy. They get it, and maybe they're happy, or maybe they go, is this all there is? But what is it that's missing? What is that decision that's missing? And when people make that decision, how does life change?
Right. So I'm a foundational person, all right?
Yes.
The foundation is because you've collected all this stuff inside that was not pleasant. You're not doing okay in there, right?
Yes.
If you collected every bad smell you ever had in your life and dumped into your house wouldn't smell too good.
Right.
You've literally made a collection of bad experiences.
Yeah.
So therefore it's not comfortable in there. So long story short, you go to the mind, which is brilliant, and you say, oh mind, what needs to happen so that it doesn't get worse and so I feel better? And it goes to its memory bank, experiences had, and it said, well, when she said she loved me, I felt better. When I went to Europe, I felt better.
Right.
When everybody applauded, oh my God, I felt better, right? And so the mind builds this model of how the world needs to be for me to feel better than I feel.
Right.
And then you go out there and try to make it happen. Yeah. So that is, to me, a losing battle. All right, because the world, you don't own the world. I think it's hilarious how we think, right? The world's going on everywhere, and you're having one moment, and you don't control all the rest of the moments, but you think I control that one. I can get every moment that passes by me to be the way I want it to be. How are you going to do that? Yeah. How will you make the weather be what you want? How will you make her be in the mood you want her to be in?
Yes.
Understand that? So what you said, in essence, is there's only one way, like a laser beam, one way that the woman in front of me can be that I will feel better. Yeah. Well, then you're not going to feel better. Once in a while it will happen, but the vast majority of the time you won't. So the answer, once you understand the foundation, is to take a look at that and say, well, that's a silly way to try and be okay. Yeah. If I'm not feeling well inside, okay, why don't I go in there and get rid of the stuff that's making me not feel well? And so you don't, like you say, achieving, you don't sit there and define, this is what I need. I need a boat. I need a boat bigger than Tony's. All right? And that's what will do it. Yeah. Well, then you're going to spend your whole life, a lot of it anyways, not being okay because you don't have that boat. Yeah. All right? Instead, you sit there and say, what I need to do is clean up in here.
Yes.
That's what I need to do.
And how do you do that cleanup?
You clean up. My way, which is different than others, is you deal with these simple little things of life every day as they come up. And people always say to me, well, how do I know what to do? I have so much in here. How do I know what to deal with next? You'll know.
Oh, it shows you.
It'll be right in your face, all right? Yeah. And you don't have to do any more. Yeah. It's not some Herculean thing. Yeah. It's just, if it is coming up and disturbing me, I am going to do something to work with it, right? As opposed to compensate for it or resuppress it, right? Yeah. And I teach lately, there's three main categories. I gave them to you, right? You can sit there and use positive thinking, affirmation, right? That's what a lot of them teach. So that if it's complaining about the car in front of you, I do that with my mind because he likes to complain about that, right? I would sit there and say, right, I have a way I like to drive. I like to drive 5 miles an hour over the speed limit. Not too much, I don't want to get a ticket, but 5 miles over the speed limit, you're probably more, but 5 miles over the speed limit, all right? And that's why I like to drive. Well, this person has the way they like to drive, 15 miles below the speed limit, right? Who do I think I am that it should be my way? And I would talk, that's called positive thinking, right? And then I feel, well, I'm being nice. I want to give this person the right to drive the way they do.
Because I have deserved to give everybody else the right.
That's exactly right. All right? But it feels good.
King me.
But it feels good to say it's a giving, right? Because that's a kind of surrender. You're letting go of that part of your being to honor and respect reality. All right? Yes. And the other that I have found is very powerful, it's a traditional technique, is train your mind, not on the site, but when you're meditating, when you're driving, something, train your mind to say something over and over again. All right? It can be a mantra. It can be, when people are into all that stuff, I tell them, just say, I can handle this. Just train your mind to say, I can handle this, I can handle this, I can handle this. Then when something takes place that tries to pull your consciousness, your awareness into that negativity, you'll find this is still going on because it's a habit. The mind's full of habits, isn't it?
Yeah.
You made a good habit. So now you have a choice. Cool. Put your consciousness on the noise or put your consciousness on the the mantra, the higher mind, the higher thing, right? Yeah. And that works too. So now that you've moved your consciousness, instead of having to change the mind, right? The mind is free to release. The whole idea is releasing, because when you let it release, it's releasing the stuff that made it be like that. Yeah. And all of a sudden, over time, right, you'll start to be happier for no reason. Yes. But of course, there's a reason. You're not carrying the garbage inside of you.
Yes.
And you got a new set of habits.
Yeah, you have things that are supporting
to relax and let go.
Supporting you, right? Yeah. Yeah. But ultimately, as I get in, it's relaxation.
Yes.
Ultimately, you can use all these techniques, but when you really are getting there, you just relax. Keep your hands off. It's judo, right? Something attacked you, let it go. Yeah. Right? It's a whole blade of grass versus the oak tree.
Yes.
A hurricane can't rip off a blade of grass, but it can break an oak tree.
That's right.
Yes.
And that's what surrender means. Surrender does not mean not doing your best at what you're doing and not being competitive and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't mean that. It means, are you willing to let go of your resistance?
Yes.
To whatever life is offering you.
One, to what's going on outside, and your resistance to letting go of the thing that's ruining your life, which is the stuff you stored inside. Yeah. Like people get divorced, okay? It happens. People get divorced. Relationships don't work. But they don't really get divorced. They keep having the same argument going on inside their mind for years, right? They're afraid to go to a party where their ex is. They're not divorced. They're only divorced outside. You don't need to carry this stuff inside. It's not true that it's burned into your brain, all right?
But all those metaphors that people use, lock them in place. You know, those metaphors make you start to believe that life is your metaphor. The same as that.
You have the right to relax instead of resist. One of the chapters in the Untethered Soul is the spiritual path of non-resistance.
Yes.
Right? And if you will do that, I'm telling you, if you did nothing else, if you do that, you will start to get higher naturally. And then the bigger stuff will come up, but because you train, we talk about building core strength.
Yes.
This is your inner core strength.
That's great.
Right? Because you
emotional
built,
fitness.
That's right. That's exactly. You built the ability to handle the discomfort. Because if it was stored with pain, it's going to come back with pain. But would you rather have the pain stay in there or get it over with? No pain, no gain. That's your world.
No, not always. Sometimes you can do it without the pain. I don't think it's always have to be pain.
Working out.
Yeah, I get it.
The one chapter in Untethered Soul that served me so greatly was, and I actually recommend, when we give the book, I literally will say, start with chapter 17, the chapter of death. And for myself, it was so profound reading that chapter, and it completely shifted how I relate to life. And just those incidental moments, not that I can't still get hooked, but it gave me the understanding of, if this was my last day on this planet, and to really live that truth, it shifted completely how just the little pebbles, and if I felt myself hooked, I would just be like, this is you living your life. This is me living my life, and I don't want to miss a moment. It's too precious. And that chapter, that understanding and using death or just that
as a counselor.
Yes.
Trust me, she uses death as a counselor. She talks about death more than any human I know.
He teases me mercilessly because he's like, will you talk about something else?
Talk about some life too.
But it was that profound for me.
Good.
It was that profound.
Was for me as well.
Yes.
It was beautiful.
That's beautiful.
So
Our whole family's read that chapter multiple times.
And it just brings life, the preciousness of life, sometimes when we get caught up in our mind or thoughts get in the way, to actually just let it go and to connect to the dearness. It was such a beautiful, profound chapter, Mickey.
So I'm interested in the course. I love that you all took the course.
Yes.
Like, to me, I've written the books, they were popular and so on. The course was the first time that I had the time to say what I want to say. I'm normally talking in an hour, a long hour and a half, something like that, right? And you see what I did, and laying it down logically through. What affected you all most? What did you get the most from the course? Which of the sessions?
Yeah, I think there are so many pieces, but I think the first thing is the one I mentioned earlier, which is really realizing that I do it too. That there are times when the inside doesn't feel good, frustration, whatever it is, and then I'm looking to fix things on the outside, and I'm good at that. But I also know the futileness of that in the end, because none of that lasts, right? So just the awareness of that alone, so that I've caught myself starting to do that and go, no, let's stay right here, right now. And then when you say relax, I had to create something, I'm an achiever like you are, but you've had a different lifestyle. And some idea of relax is, how the hell do you do that shit? So for me, it's taking the breath. It's just taking the breath and slowing it down. Because when it slows down, it doesn't have the urgency that makes things grow or makes them bigger than they are. And the other thing I think I realized was, and I'd realized this before, but I found it in a different way, was, the perfection. I've always known, like when I stand up and speak or someone stands up and they're in need, it's done when I stand up, and that's not an ego thing. It's not me. It's like it comes through me. I just know if they're standing up in this moment, it's done. And then it unfolds and I see where it is. But that's true when I'm serving others, but I don't know if that's true. I use that so much everywhere else. I began to realize just how cheap my happiness was, because I have all these rules. I have all these companies and people and things that are going on. And you've run a very large company, and I've got 54 companies now, to give you an idea, and 1,400 employees. And so what are the chances if I pick up my phone right now that somebody's messing up, if my definition of messing up is doing different than I think?
There you go.
So I realized all it took for me to be unhappy was, I don't have it here, thank God, it was my phone, right? I can pull that thing up, that's good, and we ride that road that, I think the average person I read the other day looks their phone 86 times a day, and they're under 30, it's 127. I don't know how they come up with these numbers, but that's what they've averaged. But it's a dopamine hit up and down, and I'm just realizing, my God, if everyone has to behave the way I think they should for me to be able to let go, then I'm only be able to let go in rare moments, And so I think that part. I think the other part was, and I'd love maybe if you give the riff of what you talked about. People are so stressed about this is going to work or not, and talking about this moment is really made up of 13.8 billion years before.
Yes.
Would you maybe give a little riff on that? I think that would be really beautiful for people, just as a context.
That's an example of where I love the course because I had the time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So what we do in the second session was to sit there and say, basically, let's just start there, that what the course is basically saying is, hello, are you in there? And since
and who are you?
Since 19, when did I first wake up? 71,
72?
72. I woke up, I realized, like you said, I'm in there, right?
Hello.
I would ask people all these years, hello, are you in there? Do you know that
Yes.
no one ever said no? No one ever said no.
Tell me what you mean by that, though.
Hi, are you in there?
Who are you?
All right. So just whoever you are, you're in there. What's it like in there? And that's what the course does. What's it like in there? What's your experience of being in there? And what you realize is, well, I experience the outside world, but that's not all I experience. I have a mind going on in there, and I have this thing called a heart that emanates emotions. And that's your experience, is that you are in there experiencing these things. And then in the course, each session, we take one of those things at a time, right? To say, well, what really is the mind? What really is the outside? What really is your heart? And what is your relationship to it? And what can be your relationship to it, right?
Yes,
So you're asking about the section that said, what is the world? And it has helped me so much in my growth to keep that perspective, right? And you sit there and you realize, did you make the moment in front of you? Tony, you're very powerful. People see you're very successful, right? How much of this that you see in front of you did you make? Did you invent the camera?
No.
Did you invent these people? Do you know them? Right? You know what I'm saying? The entire thing around you has nothing to do with you.
Yes.
Doesn't it?
Yes, that's right.
And yet, I love what you said. You define the only way you're going to be okay is if it's exactly the way you made up.
Yeah.
Well, you're not going to be
It's
doing too
absurd.
well.
Yeah.
All right? And so you ask the real question of, why is it the way it is? Where did it come from?
Yes.
And that course starts back with cosmology. It starts with the Big Bang, because all scientists agree that's where it came from. Well, what does that mean, right? And you come back out of the cosmic soup, all right? And basically these atoms get created. You didn't do that, did you? I don't think she did either, right? And all this goes, and then they bond together because of the laws of electromagnetics, right? The way the atoms get together, the electrons get together, and all of quantum physics and all that stuff. You have to understand it. You just understand you didn't do it. Nor did Einstein, nor did the quantum physicists that named it quantum or particles, right? The quantum particles. They didn't do it. It happened by itself through all these years, right? And then eventually it made this molecule called DNA.
Yeah.
Whoa, right? And that DNA created every single animal and humans and why your eyes are blue. You didn't do any of it. Yeah. So for 13.8 billion years, this went on, right? And the end result is in front of you. How do you not go, wow? I mean, the one that I really see people's mouth drop is when I sit there and say, wait a minute, if you don't get this, right? If your great-great-great-grandmother didn't meet your great-great-great-grandfather, you ain't here.
That's right.
And they go, whoa. That's true of everything.
Yeah.
If they, I sometimes, I don't know if I told the story in the course, but I make up a story, right? That there were dinosaurs in Florida. Okay, and there were dinosaurs. Did I tell the story right? And one dinosaur during a mud storm stepped his big foot somewhere, right? And of course the water went in and this and that. That's where Lake Okeechobee came from. Right? Some of it's
down
true.
the corner here from our house.
All right? It's true, right? Every single thing happened by itself. And now you drop down with your consciousness, and what's there now after 13 billion years comes into your consciousness, and all you do is compare it against what you made up. You compare it against your past experiences of like and dislike, and you get mad at the way it is, or you run after it.
Yes.
It's crazy.
Yes.
It's crazy to fight what life has given us as opposed to appreciate what life's given us and figure out how to utilize what life's given us.
The key is to sit there and say, would I rather be on Mars or in empty outer space and have nothing going on? No.
Yeah.
But this is the gift that was given to me, the moment in front of you.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But it's not what I wanted. What are you, a 2-year-old?
Yes.
Like, it has nothing to do with what you wanted.
Yeah.
But the only way I can be happy is what I wanted. You did that.
Yes.
Why don't you sit there and say, I want it to be the way it is so that I can have the honor of appreciating what 13.8 billion years and all of physics and science created for me to play with, learn from, challenge by. Right? It's like a sport.
Yeah.
Nobody says it has to be the way you want. When you play sports, the other team's not going to do what you want or think.
That's right.
You got to be on your toes and enjoy the experience and be in the zone, right?
Yes.
You should live in the zone.
Yeah.
You can't do that if what you've done is developed a mindset that's saying the only way I'm going to be okay is if it's this way, right? So that's where your 13.8 billion years comes from, right?
And that notion, Mickey, for myself in the course, you know, you get in life and we can all innocently and ignorantly fall asleep, and you get up and you see your partner, your spouse, you go to work, you come home, and there's just this monotonous energy that we can all fall asleep in. And what I so loved in the beginning, I said, if you were my science teacher in school, I would have been obsessed because it just gave this broader understanding, but in that broader understanding that gave perspective and just going out further, it created more awe. It created more wonder for just life itself, for actually living and breathing. I remember one of the first times I was ever in India, we went to Varanasi. And I was standing there, and there was just like this sea of humans that looks like chaos, and yet everything's all just happening perfectly. And I'd never felt more insignificant in the most beautiful way. Like, it was just a sense that whether I'm here or not, all this life is happening. And I felt that you demonstrated that in a way, in such a, in like literally where we, like life itself, you know, something's beating this heart, and we don't even have an awareness and appreciation of that. And so that just really, I don't know, it brought more awe and wonder and just humility of just this miracle of life in itself. And you did such a masterful job in your, just in your own passion and enthusiasm came through that it engaged us in such a beautiful way. And I loved every minute.
Oh,
I loved every, truly.
That's beautiful. And the examples, you remind me of what we talked about in the courses. Like, there's something like 10 trillion cells in your body that are communicating, working, living, breathing, eating, and so on.
You're not controlling any of it.
That's right.
It's all done perfectly.
None, right? And you sit there and you say, well, I need the business to be this way, right? When was the last time you thanked your liver? Was that you think your spleen and pancreas? If they went wrong, you ain't got no business.
That's right.
Right?
That's
and
right.
you start just take it all for granted. And then your mind defines this little tiny thing saying, I'm only okay if this happens. Why are you doing that? So it doesn't mean that you're not a great business person or a great athlete or so on. It just means you unburden yourself from this negativity that the mind is creating and the limitation of saying, I'm only okay if this happens, right? Now you can bring your whole being into the decision-making process, into the sports process, into your relationships, instead of trying to use the outside to compensate for the problems you're having. It's a whole different life, isn't it?
Completely different. You know, it's people in our culture have been conditioned to value things different than what really matters. And it's like even happiness is poo-pooed, and happiness is an advantage. Happy people have better relationships. Happy people, you want to be around them. Happy people have better parents. Happy people do better in business. Happy people have more connections. Happy people have more health. And so the question that you're asking really is, what's keeping me from that happiness? And some people think it was airy-fairy, but what you really got to see is it's your constriction of everything having to be a certain way for you to be happy. That's the only thing getting in the way. And if you can learn to appreciate whatever life is offering offering you right now. You can still appreciate, use it, and then shape what you're capable of shaping, whatever God or the universe has given you. That's a different world. I want to bring forth, though, something I think it's important, because some viewers could be sitting, or listeners could be sitting back and, well, this is interesting, airy-fairy stuff. But you've used this, and one of the reasons I have so much respect for you is not only the poetry of your soul and how you communicate, especially in your writing and especially in this course, but it's also you've lived this. You live, kind of a monastic almost lifestyle from most people's perception. You're in the forest, and you have your classes and the people you're with. It's beautiful. But you've also a man of the world. I mean, you built $1 billion computer company, and in the surrender experiment, you really talked about your journey. I wonder if you'd share with us a little bit of the journey. Like only 8 years ago, you went through about a 7-year cycle of the government coming at you unfairly. Could you talk about that? Because I think it'll give more gravitas to people who might be sitting there and going, okay, these guys are talking about happiness and letting go and be spiritual and all that crap. Let's talk about it from a pragmatic perspective. Tell people what you built and tell them what happened, if you would.
Well, the book, that's why I wrote The Surrender Experiment, which was very difficult to write. It took me a long time to write that book and get it to where it wasn't, I don't want people to take it as my autobiography, because it wasn't meant to be that.
Yes.
It was meant to get across, how do you live this life? I'll show you by example.
Yes.
That's what
yes.
And that's why people are getting it.
Yeah.
But basically, because I was doing this work on myself, because I vowed to myself, I'm not going out there and bothering other people to be the way I need them to be because I have problems. It's not nice. It doesn't even sound nice. It sounds rather manipulative, all right?
But that's kind of our culture now. Everybody's trying to make everybody else believe what I believe, or you're evil, do what I believe you should do, or
you're
you're
we wonder
wrong.
why there are wars.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now we have wars everywhere. Male, female, young, old,
Exactly.
in between, Republican, Democrat, everything.
That's right. So I decided to do this work on myself, and I've devoted my life to that each situation I'm going to let go of what I can that's disturbing. And what happened, and I'm not the only person this happens to, truth is it happened to you, it happened to anybody who's really successful.
Yep.
If you really look at it, you didn't do it. It came, and you participated, right? But the universe unfolded in a way that presented opportunities to you. You have no right to take credit for that, even if you're very smart. How do you know how to be smart? Who gave you your brain, right? What if your brain stopped coming up with answers? You wouldn't know what to do, right? And so you become humbled a little bit to realize you're given the gifts of your body, of your life, of your brain, of your heart, of your abilities.
Of being born in this time in history with these choices, places you live.
Everything, all right? And so I kept letting go. And what happened is somehow the universe, the story of the computer, right, as I walked into a Radio Shack store and my God, it must have been 1978, all right, when the first PCs were coming out. They weren't even called PCs yet. IBM hadn't even thought about putting a computer out. It was that little Radio Shack TRS-80s, all right, it was a little keyboard, and it just fascinated me, and that's more the kind of stuff you talk about, somebody's passion and where that comes from, right? I can't explain that. But all I know is I touched the keys, and they came up on a screen. I'd never seen that before. Ever. No one had. You typed a typewriter, it came out on a piece of paper. Not just touched it, it came up on a computer screen, right? And so I took one home and I taught myself to program, all right? And so, yes, it took a certain amount of intelligence or whatever it is, but everybody we have human brains, they're very smart, all right? We just use them for the wrong thing, all right? And basically, as one thing unfolded to another, I ended up, the book tells the story, I ended up writing a medical billing package. People asked me to, I didn't decide. Asked me to, and I wrote it, and it went crazy. Now, at some point, 25% of all independent physicians in the United States were using my software.
Say that number again.
25% of all independent physicians in the United States of America were using that software. All right? And that went out in 81, 82.
So you're first to the market.
And national distributor picked it up. Not the exact version, but that piece of software, the medical manager, is still being, somebody the other day told me that they went out and they had a way to check that 44,000 people at that moment were logged into the medical manager. Was that 35 years later?
Wow.
That's ridiculous, right?
Especially how technology has changed.
Well, it evolved, but it was still the same software, right?
I get it.
So in any event, basically, I learned this thing which I call surrender, which is I don't have to do this. What I have to do is be open, ready, in the zone, that's the word you all use, and participate in what is unfolding in front of me. And my experience is, if I do that, it's higher than me deciding what it all should be, right? And kind of participating,
As
and
it
then
unfolds.
the inspiration comes.
Yeah.
Event, it's miraculous,
Yeah.
really. All right,
Yeah.
but life is miraculous. It's
Yes.
not just that,
Yeah.
all right?
Yes.
And then you asked me to talk. I don't usually talk about it, but at some point, this giant company built. We went public. All this stuff happened. At one point, I had 2,300 employees reporting to me. All right, and
Yeah.
I'm CEO. I'm running this stuff. Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I'm not doing anything. There are lots of other people working, all right? But I'm in charge, all right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, one day, somebody gives me a call and says, you better come back to the office. I said, why? Because the FBI is here. Well, why is the FBI here? Well, did somebody get lost? Or, no, it's a
forest.
raid. It's a raid. The entire sheriff's department is here. There's 10 FBI people running around. They have guns. They're armed. They've taken over the facility. What? As if I know. In my wildest dreams, I couldn't think what was going on.
Wow.
Right? And so what happened is one of the employees that did not work where I worked, or I worked from his home remotely, had been stealing, and had been doing kickbacks and doing very bad things, all right, which we knew nothing about, all right. We had actually, the lawyers had caught something. They were getting wind, investigating it, but what he did was, I don't need to tell the story again in the book, is he used his manipulative powers, right, that had earned him millions of ill-gotten dollars, and went and figured he was caught. So he went to the government and said, we told him to do it. That the entire executive team knew it. How could they not know what he was doing? Come on, right?
Right.
And they bought into it, right?
Wow.
And he turned witness, right? Turned
The very guy that did the
exactly.
deed turned
Right.
against.
And listen, the people are trying to do their jobs. I don't blame them. You follow me? And so
Yeah.
the entire FBI and the entire Justice Department, there were 3 raids in 3 different cities, and they for 6 years did every single thing they could to prove that we knew what he was doing, and that we should be responsible for what he did, and he got off. He served 1 year, but basically they let him off of everything, right? And so that was a heck of a thing to go through.
It was dark days, and there were times in that, as you tell the story, when like your lawyer who was really fighting for you and starting to make progress develops cancer, and now he has to go off and get cancer treatment, and then the judge gets changed.
That's right.
I mean, you had so many things that you could not control that would seem insane, and yet through it all, you would stop, breathe, relax, let go, and just trust that this is guiding you to a higher place. Tell them what happened in the end.
Well, my view was, I wasn't even the higher place thing. My view was I devoted my life to letting go of the garbage that comes up inside of me. That's what I devoted my life to. It's an experiment,
Yes.
right? Okay, this was causing some garbage to come up. You could be sure of that, all right? It's like, wow, all right? I felt like Christ laying down on the cross, all right? Because I had
And for 6 years.
I had no idea what was going on. There was nothing to do about it.
Yeah.
And you're innocent, yet they're all
matter.
claiming, you're saying you're the mastermind behind this because you're the CEO,
Well,
right?
they really did 10 of us, and they were all innocent. They did our general counsel, the CPA, the outside accounting firm. They had to prove everybody was wrong if they were going to sit there and say that
Yes.
it was a conspiracy.
Right.
All right. So basically, I kept letting go. That's what I did.
Wow.
I just kept letting go, honoring the experience, honoring the purification, and I did not let my mind say it'll work out fine. That's a cop out.
I can handle this in the back
I
of
can
you.
handle this.
I can handle this. I can handle this. I can handle
I
this.
can and I will.
I can and I will.
And miraculously, the whole thing went away. It was just as if somebody pulled a string. They dropped all the charges. They dropped everybody else's charges. Then it's like
The judge helped, I guess, too, if I remember right.
You'll read the book. It's phenomenal.
Yes,
Yes.
it is.
Very
You gotta
rare.
read it.
Very rare
Yes.
that would take place. All right?
To say the least.
All right, and
Most people call it a miracle.
Imagine how far I'm gone now that I went through all of these processes by letting go.
Yes.
Yes.
By surrendering. Doesn't mean I didn't have a great lawyer. It was a big case, all right?
Yeah.
And all the finest lawyers in Washington, and everybody was working on this thing. So you didn't
You
surrender
did everything you
that.
could do, but then you surrendered whatever we couldn't
I
control.
surrendered what was coming up inside of me that was having difficulty with the situation. I want to be able to sit on a planet,
Yes.
spin through space while I'm here, and enjoy the journey.
Amen.
And boy, that's
Regardless
part
of
of
what
that
happens.
journey. That's part of the journey.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? How many people get to tell that story? Little
Yeah.
story I
Yeah.
just got to tell. I tell it to my grandkids. It's-
But you also built spiritual muscle. You built. You wouldn't. It's like as soon as you claim, okay, I'm going to be happy no matter what, no matter if it rains on my parade, if people are unjust, because they're going to be unjust. It is going to rain on your parade. But the minute you do that, you get tested. I found that in my own life, health-wise. Your test was so large that you expanded through that, and now that's why you give your gift to millions of people, because you live. I want people to know you're not just sitting here talking a good game, saying, yeah, relax and let go. You've lived it in the real world, And because of that, you have the joy that you continuously have today, regardless of what happens in your
That's
life.
exactly right. And one of the one
Yes,
of the neatest parts of this, and I think I say it in the Surrender Experiment, is The Untethered Soul is a very popular book. So millions of copies. Oprah literally said it was the
New York
finest book
Times
she ever
bestseller.
read. Oprah gives it away to everybody, right?
Yeah.
That book was written in the midst of this investigation.
Oh, I didn't
Wow,
realize that.
wow.
Wow.
While they were after me, while all that was happening, while we're
Perfect thing to
fighting.
write while you're doing it, though.
Well, it just
bring you
shows,
into the center of who you are.
but it shows if you're willing to let go, you go about your life's business. You do not let these things bother you.
Yes.
Right? And I remember when I told Oprah that, right? I remember doing the interview with her, and she said, I wish I knew you, because she said, I can't do that. And when they pick on me, I get in trouble, right?
Yeah.
I wish I knew you back.
Yeah.
Right?
Like when she was going through the court case.
When you were
Yes.
going through the court case.
Yes.
And she didn't show it on the show. She took it out of the interview. But I said, Oprah, you did. And she just went like that. And I said, you did know me. She said, why? I said, that book you like so much, right? I wrote that during that time.
It's incredible.
So there, you got to know me.
Wow. That's
really cool.
So that's how good you can be, all right?
Yeah.
But you're right. You have to build your muscle. You do
Yes.
you do it with the fact that somebody beeped at you. If you can't handle that, you can't handle this.
That's so awesome. By the way, I want to
Yes,
say
of
again
course.
on Untethered Soul, Oprah's a dear friend of ours. She's given this to everybody. But like Ray Kurzweil, who's, many of you know, created digital music, created, Siri, created everything. He's the greatest scientist alive. Anybody who really picks this up, pragmatic or spiritual, doesn't matter what you think you are, you're going to find answers in this book, and you'll find answers in this course. And I really want to promote the course for you, because most people don't read. Please read it. But read it and do the course, because you can do the course a little bite size at a time, an hour at a time, or just go online and do the 30-minute version, and it'll hook you. Because right now we have this limited amount of time, and Mickey's sharing from his heart, and we're interacting, but that's just pure his soul saying, here's how you find peace, joy, love in your life, no matter what. Here's how you have sustained happiness. That's a promise that just anybody would be crazy not to take up on. What were you about to say, Hannah?
Honestly, I just wanted to say thank you, Mickey, because you navigated that time in your life so consciously, and you brought meaning, and you unraveled and you let go. Something that so struck me out of the course, besides the decision of making the decision of living, in happiness and living fulfilled in a happy life, was actually being able to sit with pain. That notion out of the course itself, for myself, it's like, say if something happens that's unpleasant or it's painful, it's fearful, or whatever the emotion is that's passing through, what I found was it was like, with the awareness of the preciousness that today could be the last day of life, then there was like an appreciation rather than a resistance to the experience. It's like, okay, this is life too. And finding beauty and meaning. And then it was like getting behind there a bit and noticing that, okay, sensations, funny feeling in my gut, funny feeling, you know what I mean? And you just started to notice sensations. And as I noticed sensations, it was easier to get behind it and less identify with it and have less of a charge. And that's a constant process. It's a constant process. But I'm so deeply grateful to you for walking that path as clearly as you did. Because that unraveling that happened for you, it's happening for me, and I truly just want to say thank you, because it's one thing to find meaning when life, not only looking a certain way, but on that inner world of happiness or experiencing whatever that joy or connectedness or intimacy of dearness or love or preciousness, but then actually being able to sit with an experience and actually feel that fully. And it's like just the awareness that, wow, this is just a sensation. The thought and getting behind that, it was just transformational for me personally. So I just wanted to say thank you, Mickey.
That's beautiful.
How important is the slowing down or the relaxation? I think of relaxation, for me, I think of it, I've got to slow it down. When it slows down, it doesn't have the bite. It doesn't have the power. I'm able to become the witness. How do you slow it down? And is that an important part of it or not, in your experience?
I don't any longer have to slow it down. It's like learning to walk. I learned to ride a bike.
Yeah.
Yeah, now it's automatic for you.
You take your different stages, right?
Yeah.
So first, and in the book, there's a chapter called, Oprah said it was her favorite chapter. It was called Let Go Now or Fall.
Yes.
The moment, is very much what you were talking about, the
Yes.
moment you see, like anger doesn't happen all at once. It starts like, it starts down there. You understand that? That's when you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
You have to
Yes.
be sincere enough to say, I don't even want to know what I'm about to get angry about.
Yes.
I know that that's not a part of my being I need to listen to. All right?
Right.
So when it starts, you relax, right? It's that commitment to relax. You relax your shoulders, relax your chest, relax your tummy. It doesn't take time. It's not like you have to put aside time to do this,
Yeah.
right? You just have to be conscious and
Yes.
be committed. right?
Yes.
So you relax it and you lean away. You just lean away from the noise, right? And you actually don't realize it. At first, it feels good because you didn't get angry. You didn't get all involved or neurotic or whatever it was, right? You react. But you're actually leaning into a deeper part of your being when you lean away from the lower part of your being, right? And I want to do one little thing because a lot of your people are very successful. Obviously, they work with you. So they get successful, right? And I often have people say to me, I don't want to give up the fear. I don't want to give up the anger. It's what drives me. It's what I use. Come on,
It's an old strategy.
you know they say that, right?
Too.
It's what I use to be successful, right? If I give that up, why would I get out of bed in the morning? They actually ask that, right? And what you're missing is, for one thing, there are lots of things you can use, drugs, all kinds of things, please don't, all right, that temporarily or momentarily can give you some energy, right? But they will destroy you. Anger will destroy you. Fear will destroy you. They burn out your adrenals. They burn out your system. You understand? So it's not a long-term solution. And this question of, if I don't have that to drive me, why would anything drive me, right? Have you ever fallen in love? Who's ever fallen in love? Do you find that you're driven to be with the person? Do you find you want to get things for him or her? Do you find, right?
Yes.
Love is a motivator, way greater than fear or anxiety or any of that kind of pain, anger. Love motivates you to give and express itself. Love wants to express itself. So what happens is when you let go of this lower stuff, you'll start noticing love starts to come up. You're starting to open up to the higher energies. And love can run business.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be
Runs a
hate
better
or
business.
fear or competition, right? You look at Steve Jobs. They fired him when he came back. Look what he did to that company. Why? Because he was inspired. That's not fear. That's not anger, right? It's inspiration. And inspiration can't happen when you're giving your way to the lower parts of your being, right? And so that's the real understanding, is there's work to do to raise your energies up to a higher level. Then let those motivate you, and they don't burn out. Love doesn't burn out, does it?
Never.
It doesn't even get tired. Right?
Will never lasts. No matter, I got a lot of will, you got a lot of will, but will doesn't last.
It's not going to do
the
it.
difference between push and pull. It's like fear and will are pushes. Love is pull. And pull goes on, like you said, forever.
There's an energy inside of us. You have a lot of it. People know that. There's an energy inside of everybody, though. It's not just Tony, right? There's an energy inside of every single person that, if they take away the walls and the blockages, is inspiring, it's uplifting, it feeds you from inside. People that are into religion and stuff, we don't talk a lot about that, but in the Bible, Christ said, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that leaveth the mouth of the Father. Believe it or not, that's what he's talking about. That you don't get your energy from outside, right? You get it from this beautiful flow inside, right? Call it whatever you want. Call it inspiration. Call it spirit. Call it Shakti in the East. We call it that, right? It's the energy of your being, but it's blocked. So instead of trying to push through the blockages and make it flow anyways by finding something that turns you on, remove the blockages and you'll wake up in the morning and giggle, right? And be all excited what's going to happen today, right? And what can happen today is you build $1 billion company. I don't care. It doesn't have to be
or you
nothing.
hang out with your kid, or you
whatever it
read a
is.
book,
And you become inspired. You're an inspired being. And then it's contagious, just like you are. Everybody gets turned on by somebody who's turned on. So it's a gift you bring to the world.
I think everybody gets turned on because it's our true nature. All it is it's flipping on the light. It's like darkness only exists because of the illusion, because you don't have the light on. And what I'm hearing you say is, it's oftentimes I'll try to give people the metaphor of how people tell me their most stressful thought will ask them very often, and they'll say, "Oh, we're going to make enough money. Is my business going to make it? Am I doing enough for my kid?" All the things that people do in their heads. And in a large room, 10 or 15,000 people, say, "Who else has this thought?" And 99% of the room has the thought. I said, if you're going to be stressed, at least find an original thought to be stressed about. Don't be copying everybody else. That thought's been around for 1,000 years. You really think it's your thought? And so that process, but what shifts the energy for me is to often use the metaphor of like turning a cable TV. You turn to one channel and it's all horror pictures. Turn another, it's all comedy. Another one, it's all romance. You have developed these ways of lifting the energy to those higher energy levels. And this higher energy, it's like it connects you to a different thought pattern, to a different emotion, different experience. What are the ways you've described the you don't even have to worry about slowing down anymore, but the letting it down, letting it go, relaxing, separating back from it,
away from
pulling away, but going deeper into your deepest true self. Is there anything else that people can do, or any other triggers you can give them that can help them to make that separation and come back to the truth in a
traditionally, and you know, traditions sometimes have meaning and purposes.
Sure.
There's this thing called meditation,
Sure.
right? And it's becoming very popular, but not, you know, meditate so you get enlightened and not meditate for hours. Or something. That's silly, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
15 minutes in the
Yes.
morning, 15 minutes in the evening, just like you work out, just like you work with your diet, right?
Yes.
And you use that time to come in tune with yourself. It doesn't have to be spiritual experiences or white lights or anything like that.
Yeah.
You use that time to sit there and say, what is my mind doing? You're going to be afraid to look, right? And you practice witness
practice,
consciousness,
yes.
what you're talking about.
Yes.
And what will happen if you do that is just exactly what Sage said. Your seat will become more, we call it becoming established in the seat of self.
Yes.
Okay?
Your
You're
true
just,
self, your
you're
higher
just
self.
there. Your consciousness, you're
Yes.
there, right? And you realize I'm looking, if, let's say someone came to you and said, my heart hurts, right? Normally, a normal person with therapy and what's wrong and who did what, they don't want to come to me, right? I won't let them do it because I'm going to say the same thing every time. How do you know? You should see their face if you say that. How do you know your heart hurts? It's like, well, no, that's not what you're supposed to say. No, how do you know your heart hurts? And eventually they get mad at me and say, because I'm in here and I see it. And I'll pronoun to them, right? Who's in there?
Yeah.
Who's in there?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
You're not the hurting heart. You're the one who's experiencing the hurting heart. So the more you come back in tune with yourself,
Yes.
right, the easier it is to let go. So meditation, taking a little bit of time for working with yourself to develop these habits. They're just good habits, right?
Just like if you want to build a business, there's certain
That's
consistent
right,
things
exactly.
you got to do. And if there's something broken, you go to a doctor and you work on it. You talk about that in the book and in the course. If your heart was hurting, your arm's hurting, you just go to somebody. But when your mind is constantly chattering with what you aren't doing, it's not enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not strong enough, smart enough, or whatever people do inside their heads, or it isn't working the way it should, we don't do anything with it. So you're saying take 15 minutes twice a day and get some witness, get some experience from that, let go of that, and develop the habit of that so that when it does happen in day-to-day life, you've already got that muscle built.
That's right.
And I'll share from my own experience. It's clunky in the beginning, just for those of you that are watching, because it doesn't happen immediately, and it really is practice. And for myself, if we were relating and I came in hot one day, and
You hot?
and I was already in it, so I was charged. It was already happening. In the moment that, for myself, the statement helps me so much. This is me living my life. And then once again, it's just like bringing death right there. And it's like, I don't want to relate that way. And so in the moment I have awareness for myself, I just own it and take responsibility and say sorry. Because to say sorry, it's like it connects you and it offers a different currency. I think what's so beautiful too is, as speaking of the higher energies, it's a currency, it's an energy, and love gives of itself. And as we get more out of our way, rather than I want the external to love me or I want this to make me feel good, it's like this flowering of this opening as we continue to let go, that this love just wants to give, it just wants to serve, and it's so natural. And for myself, if there's a moment that, I don't feel that I'm my best self, to actually own that and to just communicate that and convey that, I'll just say, listen, I was just crazy and I was blind. I'm sorry. Can we please reset? Oh. And until this day,
we do it no matter what immediately. It's the agreement that starts with it. Either one of us gets sane. That's all it takes. We'll both get sane.
And to really deeply connect to that, because in the awareness, then, I don't know, just that I'm sorry, and to mean it from your soul, it just cuts. It just cuts and it harmonizes, and then you get some distance, and it's like, okay, now let's relate from here. And it just becomes that habit of, in the moment you have awareness that you're crazy, you're unconscious, you're blinded, for myself anyways, to speak that, it breaks the pattern.
It's also, if this is the last moment you're going to have in life with your beloved, is this the way you want it? And no one knows when that last moment's going to be. So we use that frame of reference with each other as well. And we both take 100% responsibility. It's like she can never say, I'm sorry, responsibility to say, no, honey, I have to see what, because everything is co-created, we know that experience. But it cuts it so quickly when you're into that place. Tell me, there's so much joy in your heart, Nikki. We off camera talking with you, it's just such a pleasure to be around you. That pleasure, you said, is infectious. And I know you've worked in the prison system as well. Tell me, guys in prison, I've seen guys in prison that are free. I know you have too, because they're free in here. And I've seen guys in prison that, I've seen people on the outside, they're not in prison. Most people are not free. Tell us how you approach things when you go into prison, because I think it's a good metaphor for all of us, that maybe not acknowledging that we've got our own mental prisons at times.
Right. I don't go in anymore. I went for 30 years. I went into maximum security prisons. That when the lawsuit happened, actually, it was one of the sadder things I said in the book, that they said, you can't come in while that's going on. Right? So that broke. So it was just one of the tragedies of that stuff. Yeah. But the net result is I was going into maximum security prisons. You know, most of the guys will never get out, right? Florida State Prison, Union Correctional up here. And my attitude ever since I started teaching is I don't think of myself as a teacher, I'm just sharing my experience, is I don't change what I have to say anytime, no matter who my audience is. So when I walk in that prison and I sit down with the inmates, with my boys, my men, right? I say exactly what I say sitting in the temple or when I say talking to you, right? And what is amazing is no matter who they are and where they came from, they get it. Exactly the same, right? And to this day, I say I don't go in, they still write me. I get lots of letters from the inmates. We send our books in for free. You know, we do the thing. But they stayed free. In fact, there was a neat experience I had just before the whole thing happened. I couldn't go in anymore. They decided to separate the men in prisons where the older ones would go to a prison. They broke the prison system up a different way. And so these men that had gone together were meditating together and had support groups together, got torn apart. And literally at 3 in the morning, they would come in. They didn't want to tell them. They didn't want trouble. They would take them. They couldn't take their books, couldn't do anything. It's not nice to think about, right? And they took, well, one of the men, all right, the black man, probably in his 30s, 40s, but he was very sincere. Right, and he was trying to meditate and so on, and he used to say to me when I'd go into prison, he'd look at me and say, "I'm still watching." He, melt my heart. I'm still watching. Okay,
that's beautiful.
And so he got torn away and thrown down to some prison, you know, somewhere in Florida, and he wrote us, and it touched me so deeply. He said, "This was one of the worst experiences I've ever gone through, and thanks to your teachings, I have gone through it instead of letting it destroy me, and I'm still watching."
That's beautiful.
I watched it all.
Witness it.
But I was going to say in something you said, and I want to make that point because we've talked about surrender. But you need to take the course to understand what surrender means, right?
It's not what people think it is.
It's a difficult thing, right? When you were talking about being honest and saying I was in a bad space, right? Isn't it true with both of you that there's a party that doesn't want to do that?
Oh, of course.
Now, I want to talk about that.
Until you make it a habit.
But I want to talk about that. Because
Yes.
that's what surrender means.
Yes.
Surrender means the willingness to surrender that part of your being.
Amen.
So that something higher can happen.
Yes.
Right? But that's ego. It's
The
just
ego.
pure ego.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I want to blame it on him.
Oh, yeah,
I don't want to admit I
absolutely.
was wrong. Right? Man, the breaking of that habit.
It's one of the most important ones in life. Well, for a relationship, if you don't have that
for
relationship,
every
it's pretty hard.
business too.
Yeah, it's true. It's true because business
I
is
remember
relationship.
in my business, and I shouldn't use the name, but I will, where EDS, remember EDS, Perot's company, right?
Yes.
They wanted to have something to do with our business. So they flew their senior VPs, presidents of division, everything of healthcare out to my place, and they flew me over there to Plano, wherever the heck they are. And I remember that we were sitting on the plane, right, and he was talking to me, and this particular person sat there and told me that they were trying to change the culture in this company to where they literally were training their executives to say I was wrong. And he didn't like it, right? He said, come on, these are power people, right? But they literally had caught on the higher level of that company, had caught on that if you're not willing to say you were wrong, right, you can't be right.
Absolutely.
Because you can't work with anybody. Isn't that beautiful?
Plus, you can
It's
never
so
make
beautiful.
a mistake.
You
You
can-
can never
but-
do anything
but isn't
worthwhile,
that how
right?
the ego
That's
is?
gorgeous.
Yes.
Yeah, it is so true.
Right?
It is
So that's
true.
what you're doing. We all need to do, even in business. Right?
Absolutely.
Just that, don't worry about what you look like. That's ridiculous. Worry about how you're helping the situation outside. It's not about you. It's about your contribution to the overall whole. That's what business is, right? If you make it be about you, it's dead because you're not doing so well.
You got to add more value than anybody else in the marketplace. To do that, you have to be clear.
That's right.
You got to let the energy come through you, and you can't have all this muck getting in the way.
Yeah, but that's exactly right. And that's what I call the zone.
That's right.
When the muck is not there, oh my God.
Yes.
Everything flows.
Right. I was watching a football game the other day, and I was so impressed. They were sitting there talking about how some of the rookies, I think it was some of the quarterbacks, were talking, Rodgers, right? They're talking about how some of the rookies aren't ready yet because they're still thinking. Wow, is that deep?
So true.
Aaron, right? They're still
true.
thinking, and you can't do it right while you're thinking.
That's right.
It has to be
You have to be in
zone.
the flow state.
Yes.
Yeah.
But isn't that beautiful?
It is
Isn't
beautiful.
that
Which
what we're
requires,
talking about?
Yes.
and that trigger is maybe doing something enough, I can handle, whatever the case may be, till you let go, and the flow just happens.
Well, that's exactly. Every time you let go, you are open. They are like blinds. You have blinds closed that are not letting the light in. All right, it's not
The light
about
of joy, the light of love,
It's not
the
about
light of-
finding more
Great
light, energy, right? It's not about finding more light or setting up artificial light. It's about opening the blinds. And this, what we're talking about, and obviously I'm very impressed. You guys got it, and that's why you're so successful. All right, and that's why your relationship is so successful. It's beautiful that you all love each other at that level for such a length of time, right? And everyone should learn from that. And what it is about the willingness to open the blinds.
It is.
If you open the blinds, the energy.
And it's your blinds. Most people want to open somebody else's blinds. Right? If I could just you to open the blinds and see this, that's what most of us do, and I've certainly been guilty of that in the past. But when you open your own blinds, then everything is clear.
But the energy comes in. You're a being
you
of
can't
high
have energy
energy.
without it.
You know if you close inside, that energy doesn't come.
No way.
Right? And
No
so the
way.
willingness to take that risk of letting go of the part of you that's limiting yourself, which is the ego, and the self-concept and all this stuff, right? And you just keep
Which is
letting
just
it
another
go.
word for ego, just fear. So a lot of people, they make the ego like it's this thing they got to fight. It's just fear. That's really what it is. It's the fear you're not enough. It's the fear you won't be loved. It's those unconscious fears. And if you relax and let go, you find out the fear is unfounded. It's like, how many things in your life have you been fearful about or frustrated or worried about, and they never came to be? And you spent all that time being stressed. I love that old quote that says, that a coward dies 1,000 deaths, a courageous man only once, a woman only once, right? It's just like, let's just deal with it as it comes up as opposed to what we do in our mind. Because so much of our pain and our stress in our lives is just made up by the mind. And getting out of that and back into the heart, the spirit, and the soul is what it's all about.
And it ends he should, she should, these ridiculous unconscious expectations of another and unconscious blame or unconscious judgments. And when you have that full responsibility and you claim that for yourself, it's like, oh, you turn that around. I should. All this advice that we're giving to whomever in our life, it's like if you're actually willing to turn that around and take responsibility for that and then offer that, it neutralizes it. It completely unravels these internal knots that we have and the insane expectation that somebody is supposed to behave or do something different or speak differently, or that's just craziness. And yet when you're in it, you don't see it. But when you actually have that understanding, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And that's just such freedom. That's just such freedom.
It's trading the expectations for appreciation. It's like that's when suffering stops. It's like all the expectations are not going to be met. Doesn't matter how hard you work. They're going to be people are going to be in a different state, a different situation. They're going to have different goals. They might have a better way to do it, and you just doesn't match your picture. But what I found is what I start to expect, if I just let go of the expectation and find things to appreciate. There's always millions of things to appreciate. Suffering's gone. The joy recovers immediately. It's not like something you're going to get someday when it's there. I want to come back to something you mentioned earlier, but I'd love it if you just plan it a little deeper, and I know we're going to wrap up our conversation soon, but one of you said one of the most important questions to answer is, who are you? Who's in there? And you kind of started to allude to it, but you have several metaphors you've used before to get through to people so they get to see that who they are is not their emotions, who they are is not. Would you share maybe a moment or two of that?
Well, that's the deepest teaching there is.
I think so too.
I think the main thing is to ask yourself, right? When you go to sleep, you dream. You wake up and you tell her your dream, right? I don't understand. Were you there? Who saw the dream? Was it the same person who watched the dream who's looking out through your eyes? That's you. Yeah. You understand that?
Yes.
Right? So your body went to sleep, but your consciousness, your awareness of being, right? You don't say, I am the dream. You said, I had a dream. I saw a dream. You should see what I dreamt. Who is this I? Who is this awareness of being that watches the dream, looks out through the eyes, hears through the ears, hears the mind be neurotic, right? If I sit there and talk about that voice in your head that drives you crazy, why did I say that? Oh my God, that was stupid. Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. What is that, right? It's not you. You're the one who's hearing it say that. And that's the awakening, right? Where it's not very far. It's sort of like you're watching TV and you're sucked into the TV, right? Well, when you're sucked in the TV, you don't have a family, you're not in a house, you're in the TV. You've projected your consciousness into what we call the object of consciousness. That's right. Then all of a sudden something happens, you're back on the couch. When you're back on the couch, there's a whole room, and there's people, and there's food, and right? Well, there wasn't before. And then, oh, by the way, there's a TV over there. It's just nothing. That's what your mind is, the talky mind. Your consciousness got absorbed. I would call it in the I channel. Oprah has an O channel, you have an I channel. Okay? And so basically it got absorbed in that channel. you don't have to. You can come back to the couch. That's what the seat of self is.
Yeah.
And the beauty, and you're all finding that, you know that, is not only then do you not have the problems that are created. If you talked about it, if you're watching a horror show, you feel horrible,
Yes.
right? You don't have to go out there and yell at the producers, right? You don't have to watch the show. You don't have to go
Change
there.
the channel.
Whatever. You don't have to go there and fix all these things that are going on in your mind. I told you why they're there, because you stored all this garbage, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to watch that show. You can turn your consciousness elsewhere, right?
Yeah.
And not only then do you not suffer because of the garbage that's going on in the mind and the heart and your judgment of the world, as you talked about, but you're going to find out that you in there, which is what you asked me to talk about, and I don't, right? You in there are beyond your comprehension.
Yeah, I love
You
the
are
way
the
you gave
most beautiful thing in the world.
Your experience of that, where you described looking in the mirror over the years and you're seeing something different, but it's still you seeing it. Or the emotions that you have, they're constantly changing. You're not the emotions, you're the witness of those emotions. If you forget, you'll think you are those emotions, and then you'll feel the pain of that as well. But I think it's important for people to realize there's something that we call ourselves that is greater than anything could ever happen to you, anything you could ever experience. And if you come back to that, that's the seat of the soul. That's where there's no pain. That's where you're able to experience all of life and see that it's all this beautiful game that's here for you to appreciate, as opposed to judge and be upset by and frustrated with and try to control when you can't.
And when it's said and done, that's where all the energy comes from.
Yes.
That's what you find.
It's the freedom.
But it is the source of
Yes,
energy. Like
I
I
get it.
quoted from the Bible, right? And it's not by bread alone, but every word that leaves the mouth of the Father. You will realize when you let go enough of yourself that all that good juice that you got because things are the way you wanted was coming from there.
Always.
Love does not come from the heart. It comes from there down through the heart because the mind lets it or doesn't let it, right? So human love we experience that way, but what we call spiritual love, the deep stuff, is coming from the core. That's why they say God is love, right? It's the core of your being. So now you're talking deeply spiritual stuff when you start to identify and rest back into your soul, back into the seat of your being. But the beauty is all of that beautiful energy you have, that's where it comes from. It is the source of your being. And everybody has the same amount and more than you do, all right?
I agree.
And period. And even the people on the side of the street that are, right? It's just that they're closed. And so the whole key is how do you open? And that's what the course is about.
You got to do the course. He's not selling it. We want you all to experience it because we've had a little hour here or so, but you want to tap into that. I want to mention one thing though. You triggered me on. You know, when you look at people's lives, most people have been taught God is love on the surface, but they also think God is judgment, and the mind is really the judgment, right? How do you get people from God is judgment? Many people have been raised that way. They've been conditioned to think that way, depending on how they were raised, religiously or non-religiously. To where God really is love and where joy is the natural experience of their expectation of life.
But by doing every single thing we talked about this entire hour,
Eat little steps.
coming back to your core. Like, I don't mean quoting the Bible in here, but in the Old Testament it says man was created in the image of God. That doesn't mean God's got 2 arms, 2 legs, and a beard. That's God is created in the image of man. All right?
Yeah.
And you're going to find out, and I don't want to be the one who tells you, that as you come back in here,
The more you do that.
you feel that closeness.
Yes.
And you realize that is my nature. I'm divine in nature, right? I'm watching a human, but that which is watching is spirit, right? And that's where it falls away. And you start feeling love. And there's a chapter in the book like that, the last chapter. You start feeling love and joy, and you realize, is that what's back here? Is that what God is? Love, joy, acceptance, surrender, the whole ball.
A direct experience of that as opposed to someone telling you what it is.
That's exactly
It's not
right.
personal.
And it's not mental.
Yes, exactly.
You have had, you alluded to, I think one of the books, I don't remember where, but you alluded to, and your life is kind of an expression of, you've moved from seclusion to service to some extent. And you were telling me off camera here that this is one of your finest pieces of work. Tell me, what is your legacy? What is it that you're trying to give this world? Because I know Mickey in there would just love to hang out and just experience this, but he's also called. I mean, that's the real Mickey. We talked about that, right? He'd be by himself in total joy and happy. He doesn't need a damn thing.
Me too.
But Mickey also is called, this part of him, this higher part of you has been called to serve. We've been so touched by your service. I know so many watching already have been touched by your service even before this interview, and I know will be more. But tell us what pulls you out now to serve like that still, even though there's some, there's sometimes that feeling of wanting to be back there. And what is your legacy? What are you wanting to leave here?
Well, first the answer is surrender, which again, The course is called Living from a Place of Surrender, the
Yes.
Untethered Soul in Action, right? Because people can't get surrender by the word. The word surrender means, I surrender.
Yeah, I give up.
Okay, I
Yeah.
give up, right?
That's not what
Sherman
it is, yeah.
surrendered, all right? that is not what it
I'll
means.
never do that.
That is not what it means, all right? And so basically, why I teach and why the service is taking place is because I've learned to respect the moments that unfold in front of me. And those are the moments that unfold in front of me. I sit out there in the woods, I sit in the woods, and kids come out, and people come out, so I teach, right?
Yeah.
And so on, right? It's
Yeah.
not a thing I'm doing,
Yeah.
it's a service I'm performing because of the moments that are unfolding in front of me, right? And it becomes really easy when you live that way. It's not a conceptual way of living, and the whole business grew that way.
Yeah.
Right? We don't understand
Yeah.
that, right? And as far as a legacy, when I did with Sounds True, which produced the course, when I did the course with Sounds True, what everything inside of me said was, this is my legacy. This is what I get to leave behind. If people want to learn what I learned, if people want to hear how all this happened, right? I get to have these 8 to 9 hours in 8 sessions where I can say what it is I want to say to you. I care about you, right? I'm looking in the camera, right? I don't care if I know you or not. I care about you because I know it can be way more beautiful than these artificial things, right?
Yeah.
And this lays that out, right, in a very logical fashion.
Well, we're deeply appreciative of all that you've gone through. No one will ever know all you've gone through to find this. Before we began here, we were doing a little meditation together, and you shared something that really touched me. You shared a little bit of just the awe of your story of how does this man, yourself, be guided from where you were, and I'd love you to share kind of what your background was for a moment, to moving into the forest and then going through the incredibly deep meditations and commitments to building this business, to now being a spiritual teacher. I mean, if there's any sense of awe in life, I look at the same thing in my own life in a different way. But would you just share that little journey for a moment, just so that people can get a sense and what you feel as you think about it today?
Well, the main thing I learned and the main thing I see and I live is if I had listened to me, it would not have happened. Okay? In other words, me meaning Mickey, me meaning the voice, the preferences, the whole thing. There's no way, right?
Because the direction you were heading initially was what?
I was going to be a professor in economics. I was getting my doctorate degree in economics, right? But I didn't make that decision. Sort of like how life pushed you, right? And then I had a very deep meditation, and where that came from, I can't answer. But I decided I had no choice. It was so deep that it moved me so deeply that I said I can't go on in life without exploring this.
Yes.
Right, and that's when I moved out to the woods.
Yes.
All right, and my thought was, I'm going to move out to the woods. I'm going to meditate. And I'm going to die there. That's all. It's do or die. All right. And there was no concept of anything after that. Right. But then I learned that as long as I was in there struggling with myself, fighting with myself, with my all the noise and the problem, that I could never be free because I was fighting with myself. The worst battle you ever want to have is the one between your left arm and your right arm. Don't arm them. All right? You can't fight with yourself. You lose. All right? And that's when I learned, I talk about that in the surrender experiment, that's where I learned that the only way I can do this is to let go and honor a force stronger than me, which is life, right? To start to do that. So this whole journey was a question of, am I ready, willing, and able to let go of the parts of me, all right, that are resisting what is unfolding, all right? And so I started doing that. I think the ultimate example is this. At one point, people were coming out, and they're on my land. I didn't want them out there. I didn't. My mind was bothering me. I just wanted to meditate, leave me alone, but they were coming out. People wanted to meditate with me, and so on. And we ended up building this temple. And I was a builder. I wasn't a builder at that time. That's how I learned to build, all right? And we built it ourselves. We didn't have any money, all right? And we built this building. And I was the head carpenter on it, and so on. And at one point, after some people helped, I was the only carpenter on it. I was building the whole thing. And while we're building it, I'm telling you the truth. I'm not embarrassed. While I'm laying down the planks, putting up the boards, all right, every single time my mind is saying, what are you doing? It's a fad. People will stop coming out here. It'll be a few months. You'll have this building in the middle of your land. I thought you were out here to respect nature. It was giving me a very hard time, right? And I just kept building. I had no answers. I didn't have to answer it. I just kept ignoring it, not suppressing it, but going about my business. That was a great learning, right? That building was built in 1975. We do no mailings, no invitations, and every single Sunday, for what now? 43 years, right? 60, 70, 80 people find their way out there to that building every single Sunday from that
beautiful.
time, right?
incredible.
And that, I look at him and I stick my tongue out. Nah. Like, you didn't know what you were talking about.
Yeah.
And that's what I've learned. He doesn't know what he's talking about. How could he? He only knows the little things that have happened to him, right? He didn't know the bigger picture. He doesn't have any idea what's going on.
Yes.
And so what I learned and what I feel now is that there's only one way to live your life, and that is life, not mind.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so what I feel is a great joy of having learned that and having let go of myself to whatever degree. I'm not high or anywhere special, but having let go enough to where there's just constant joy in here.
Yeah.
And then I know that exists inside of everybody. And of course I'm going to, if I don't go out there to push the teachings, but if people come, of course I'm going to do my best to try to help them. I said the young ones when they come. I mean, that's very moving. You know, you get 19, 20-year-old college students come out, right? And they're sitting there like this, right? And just say, oh
They're
my
hungry.
God, at that age, to realize that, right? So that's my answer to you.
Nikki, you're a beautiful soul. Sage and I both are very grateful to be able to call you a friend and to just know your spirit. And I'm just grateful to the force of nature, the force of God, the force of the universe that's brought you through this evolution, and that you were willing, as I say, to go through so much pain. No one will know all that you've gone through, but you found your way through that to the deeper and richer part of what life really is about. And I just, on behalf of all those that are listening, all those that are watching, all those that read your books, I'm just one of the millions here to thank you once again for being the beautiful soul you are, brother.
Yes.
Thank you, Sage.
Thank you.
And
we
if
love
they
you.
want to get the course, we
Yes,
talked about
please.
it.
Oh,
If
absolutely.
they just go online.
Yeah,
and
we're
search.
gonna put a link
You
for you if
link
you're
on there?
watching.
Okay.
We're gonna put a link for you so you can go directly to it.
Beautiful.
And tap into it immediately. I think you'll be thrilled. I know you'll be thrilled when you use it. So thanks for joining us again for another podcast. Thank you. There.
Yes,
Thank
thank you. Thank you. It's
you
really
here.
beautiful.
Thanks so much. Thanks sounds true as well.
Yes,
God bless.
absolutely. Take care. Bye-bye.